Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So in today's video, we both have some good news as well as bad news for all Social Security recipients. So we're going to be covering both of those news. Plus, we're going to be covering what one Democratic senator just said that is leaving a lot of Americans, quite frankly, pretty unhappy. So we'll be going over what he said as well. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Okay, so diving right into the main content of today's video, of course, we have a senator in Colorado that is leaving a lot of Americans pretty unhappy with what he just said. So we'll be covering those comments. So, of course, we had that ongoing war over in Russia and Ukraine, and now we have one going over in Israel. So we pretty much have two different wars that we are more or less supporting, not directly involved in, but we are sending taxpayer funds over to fund those wars. Not anything over to Israel yet, but that is soon to come. So we now have a Democratic senator in Colorado basically saying that we need to approve over $100 billion more to go over to Ukraine to fund that war, as well as in Israel. So according to The Hill, Senator Michael Bennet said Sunday that the proposed aid package to Ukraine should be approved without negotiations on the U.S.-Mexico border. During an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, Bennet told moderator Margaret Brennan that he and his Senate colleagues recognize that they have to include funding for Ukraine in the proposed funding request from the Biden administration. The White House last month proposed a roughly $106 billion in national security supplemental funding request that included money for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, as well as humanitarian aid and border security measures. So basically, he's saying here that, hey, even though we're not funding our own border, we don't really know who's passing through. Of course, we have drugs, we have fentanyl crossing the border at record measures. We have a lot of Americans dying from that. So obviously a very sad situation, but we have this senator here saying that, hey, even though we're not going to fund our own border, even though we may not fund our own border, instead we should be shuttling money, over $100 billion over to other countries to fund those wars, but we're not going to take care of our own border here at home. So to me, that is quite frankly pretty ridiculous, and a lot of Americans are, pretty ticked off at that as well. And hey, we have other programs here that could certainly be funded as well. We have Americans homeless on the street. We have a lot of Americans going hungry. We have a Social Security program that's going to be going insolvent in 10 years. Like, if I have $100 billion sitting around, I can certainly think of a lot better ways to help out Americans rather than sending this money overseas to other countries to fight wars and, murder human beings by the thousands. Certainly, I can think of a better way to spend this money than on wars, especially going on in other countries. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Should we be sending another $100 billion plus over to other countries for these wars? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. So, in some other news, of course, we have some good news as in 2024, or actually starting next month in December, everyone receiving Social Security is going to be receiving some type of an increase. It's not going to be as big of an increase as we received this year in 2023, which was almost a 40-year record at 8.7%. However, it is going to be something, and something is better than nothing at all. So according to the Motley Fool, of course, all beneficiaries will be getting a 3.2% cost of living adjustment increase in 2024. This means that all Social Security benefits will get a 3.2% COLA in 2024. So if we look at this chart they have up on the screen, we can see here that retired workers were receiving $1,847 this year in 2023. But next year, that's going to increase by $59 up to $1,906. Now keep in mind, this is just the average. Some people are going to be receiving less than this amount next year in 2024, whereas some people are actually going to be receiving a lot more than that. The max this year was $4,555 if you retired at the full retirement age. Of course, if you're eligible for that, you're going to receive even more next year in 2024. Then as far as spouses go, the average monthly benefit before the 3.2% COLA was $885. And then next year, that's going to be bumped up to $913, which is an increase of $28. And then as far as disabled workers go, this year they were receiving $1,489. Next year, after the 3.2% increase, that payment is going to be bumped up by $48 up to $1,537. Now they go on to say that you can calculate your cost of living adjustment by determining your current monthly Social Security benefit. Then at that point, you can add any Medicare premiums that were deducted this year. Then you can multiply that by 1.032. Then at that point, you need to subtract any Medicare premiums that will be deducted next year, such as the Medicare Part B premiums. And at that point, you just have to round down to the nearest dollar. Then, of course, next month in December, you should receive a piece of mail to your address that's going to be breaking down your benefits, everything that you're going to be receiving, as well as your Medicare Part B premium. And then you can also actually log into your Social Security account if you do have one set up online, where you should be able to get all the information a lot easier. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Is the 3.2% increase going to be enough for you to keep up with inflation? Or like a lot of Americans, is it certainly just not going to be enough to get by? But of course, we also have some bad news with that good news, if you would even consider that good news. And that is the fact that in 10 years, the Social Security Trust Fund is going to be going insolvent. Now, what exactly do I mean by insolvent? Is it just going to completely go away, or are you going to receive no Social Security benefit at all? Well, no, thankfully, benefits are still going to be going out, but on the bad side of things, they're going to be cut drastically. And a lot of people say they can be cut anywhere between 20 and up to 25%. So in just a second, we're going to be going over the worst case scenario. Like if nothing gets done in Washington like it usually doesn't, or maybe they push this off to the last second, they finally get something done. But if they don't get something done, then benefits, yes, they are going to be cut by anywhere between 20 to 25%. And you can see this article up on the screen. This is by CNBC. They say Social Security Trust Fund's depletion date moves 1 year earlier to 2034. And then you can see here that at that time, the program will only be able to pay 80% of scheduled benefits. So if they're only able to pay out 80% of these scheduled benefits, that means for everyone across the board, whether you receive retirement benefits, SSI or SSDI, it means for you that you are going to be receiving a cut of 20%. And a lot of people say this measure would actually be up to 25%. So once again, we are going to be looking at the worst case scenario. So next year, once again, all retired workers on average in 2021, they're going to be receiving $1,907. Now, just hypothetically speaking, let's say that for the next 10 years, we end up with a cost of living adjustment exactly the same as we are going to be receiving in 2024 at 3.2%. So if we do the math, we receive a 3.2% cost of living adjustment over the next 10 years. I mean, keep in mind, some years it might be lower, some years it might actually be higher. So once again, if we take the $1,907 benefit that all retired workers are going to be receiving on average next year in 2024, and we give them that 3.2% cost of living adjustment over the next 10 years, year by year, each year 3.2%, that means that in 10 years they are going to have a benefit of $2,562. So that might be solid in 10 years. But then, once again, if nothing is done, if they do have to cut benefits by 25% because that trust fund does go insolvent, meaning that we have less people paying into the trust fund and more people taking all that money out, that means their benefit is going to be trimmed all the way down to $1,921.50. So let me repeat these numbers once again. Next year, they would be receiving $1,907 on average. In 10 years, they would be receiving $2,562 on average with the 3.2% adjustment. And then if nothing is done and they have to cut benefits by 25%, in 10 years, they're only going to be receiving $1,921 on average. So over the next 10 years, they may only be looking at an increase of $14. That's probably not going to be that much. So certainly something has to be done. Now, what exactly can be done? Obviously, something has to be bipartisan. Democrats and Republicans definitely have to work together. They can't just have these one-sided bills that only work out for Republicans, and they can't only have these one-sided bills that only work out for Democrats. So both sides of the aisle are certainly going to have to come together, and usually in a lot of these cases, whether it's funding the government or anything else, they end up just kicking the can down the road to the very last second. And once again, we go back to funding all those wars overseas. It seems like we have endless amount of money to fight wars, but when it comes down to actually funding programs that help out Americans like Social Security, they just don't seem to have as much desperation to fund all these programs. So that is certainly disappointing to say the least. But let me know what your thoughts and comments are below. And that's all we have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed and found value out of it. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. And I will see you in the next video.